Blood dripped from Rafael Jin's knuckles as he slammed his fist into the bathroom mirror. Glass exploded across white marble, each shard reflecting a different fragment of his shattered face. He gripped the sink, breathing hard, staring at what remained of the man who once ruled Harness City's underworld with an iron fist. 6 months. 6 months since the accident that wasn't an accident at all. 6 months since the Kestrel Syndicate's carefully orchestrated car crash had left him broken in ways no surgeon could fix. The physical scars he could handle. 3 broken ribs, shattered collarbone. Internal injuries that required for surgeries. Those healed. But the other damage, the invisible wound that festered in his soul, that was slowly killing him from the inside out. Rafael buttoned his shirt with trembling hands, disgusted by his own weakness. 42 years old, and he couldn't even control his own fingers. He was Rafael Jin, for God's sake. The name that made grown men sweat. The ghost who moved through soul's shadows like death itself. And now he couldn't button a damn shirt without his hands shaking. A knock thundered on his bedroom door. Dorian Vale, his second-in-command, didn't wait for permission before entering. That would have gotten him killed a year ago. Now, Rafael barely had the energy to care. "The West Side shipment needs your approval," Dorian said, his voice carefully neutral. But Rafael heard the judgment underneath. The disappointment. The calculation. "Handle it." Rafael didn't turn from the mirror. "Boss, they want to hear from you directly. The distributors are getting nervous. They're saying things. Asking questions about your commitment to." I said handle it. The words came out flat, lifeless. Not the dangerous quiet that used to precede violence. Just emptiness. Dorian's jaw tightened. "The Kestrels are making moves on the East District. Chin's crew is talking to them. If we don't respond soon, if you don't show them you're still in control, get out." The silence stretched between them like a blade. Finally, Dorian nodded once and left, closing the door with deliberate care. The kind of care you use when you're trying not to wake someone who might never wake up again. Rafael sank onto his bed, head in his hands. The doctors had warned him. Trauma like that, physical and psychological, could cause shutdowns, depression, anxiety, and other things. Things he couldn't even speak aloud. He hadn't felt desire in 6 months. Hadn't felt anything at all. His body was a corpse that kept walking, kept breathing, kept pretending to be alive. At first, he thought it was temporary. Recovery. Healing. But as weeks turned to months, he'd accepted the truth with cold clarity. The accident had taken more than his ribs. It had taken his manhood. His ability to feel. To want. To be anything more than a ghost wearing human skin. Maybe that was justice. Maybe a man who'd built an empire on fear and blood deserved to feel nothing at all. Rafael forced himself to stand, to dress, to leave the penthouse that had become his prison. He dismissed his security detail with a wave, ignoring their concerned glances. Let them think what they wanted. Let them report back to Dorian that the boss was losing it. Maybe they were right. The streets of Harness City pulsed with life he no longer felt part of. Neon signs flickered in the twilight. Street vendors called out their wares. Couples walked hand in hand, laughing, touching, living in ways Rafael had forgotten how to do. His feet carried him without destination through neighborhoods that shifted from gleaming commercial districts to grittier industrial zones and back again. Hours passed. The sun set. And still he walked, a ghost haunting his own city. That's when he saw it. Voss Atelier. The sign glowed in elegant gold script above windows that displayed mannequins in suits so perfect they looked like armor. Rafael had passed this boutique 100 times, never once considering entering. But tonight, for reasons he couldn't name, he pushed open the door. A bell chimed, soft and welcoming. The interior smelled of leather and sandalwood, and something floral he couldn't identify. Jazz played softly from hidden speakers. Fabric rustled somewhere in the back. "I'll be right with you." The voice hit Rafael like a physical blow, warm and confident, with a slight rasp that made something in his chest tighten. He froze, hands still on the door, suddenly aware of his heartbeat in a way he hadn't been since the accident. She emerged from behind a silk curtain, and Rafael forgot how to breathe. Elara Voss was striking in a way that had nothing to do with conventional beauty and everything to do with presence. Tall, with rich brown skin that glowed in the boutique's amber lighting. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek bun that accentuated the sharp angles of her face. She wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that made her look like she could buy and sell the world before breakfast. But it was her eyes that trapped him. Dark, intelligent, seeing everything. When they landed on Rafael, they sparked with curiosity and something else. Amusement, maybe. Or challenge. Welcome to Voss Atelier. Her smile was confident, unafraid, completely genuine. First time here. Rafael opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. His throat had forgotten how to form words. Because something impossible was happening. Something that hadn't happened in 6 months. Heat rushed through his body. His pulse quickened. Blood surged south with an intensity that made him dizzy. After months of numbness, months of feeling nothing, his body was responding to this woman with a ferocity that terrified him. Cat got your tongue? Elara tilted her head, her smile widening. Or are you just overwhelmed by all the fabric choices? I know it can be intimidating. Silk, wool, cotton blends. Raphael's voice cracked. He cleared his throat, feeling heat crawl up his neck. Suits. I need suits. Well, you definitely came to the right place. She moved closer, and Raphael instinctively stepped back, bumping into a display of ties. Shy? That's actually kind of adorable for a man your size. Adorable. When was the last time anyone had called him adorable? When was the last time anyone had spoken to him like he was just a person instead of a weapon, or a liability, or a king? I should go. Raphael turned toward the door, his hands trembling again, but for entirely different reasons now. You just got here. Elara's voice followed him, genuinely puzzled. Did I say something wrong? No. This was a mistake. I'm sorry. Raphael pushed through the door and out into the cooling evening air. He made it exactly 2 blocks before he had to stop, leaning against a building, breathing hard. His hand pressed against his chest, feeling his heart hammer like it was trying to escape his ribcage. And lower, impossible but undeniable, he was hard. Painfully, obviously, impossibly hard. A sound escaped him, half laugh, half sob. For 6 months, nothing. Not a flicker, not a hint, not the faintest stirring. The doctors had started talking about permanent damage, about psychological blocks that might never lift. He'd accepted it as his penance, the price for a life built on violence. And then one woman with a confident smile and a voice like warm honey had shattered that certainty in less than 5 minutes. Raphael pulled out his phone, staring at the screen. He should call Dorian. Should get back to the compound. Should focus on the business, on the kestrels circling like sharks, on the empire slowly crumbling while its king hid from his own humanity. Instead, he pocketed the phone and started walking back toward Voss Atelier. He stopped himself halfway there, forcing his feet to turn toward home. But he knew, with absolute certainty, that he would return. He had to. 3 days of agony. Raphael spent 72 hours trying to convince himself to stay away from that boutique, from that woman, from the dangerous possibility that he might actually feel something again. 72 hours of his body reminding him what it felt like to want, to ache, to be alive in ways both wonderful and terrifying. On the 4th day, he broke. The bell chimed as he entered Voss Atelier just after noon. Elara looked up from a tablet she'd been studying, and her face lit with recognition. Well. She set down the tablet, walking toward him with that same confident stride. The mysterious man returns. Changed your mind about that suit? Yes. Raphael's voice was steadier this time, though his heart still raced. Something dark. Simple. Classic. Dark and simple. The uniform of men with secrets. She gestured toward the fitting area at the back. Come on. Let's see what we're working with. The fitting room was intimate, all mirrors and soft lighting. Elara moved around him with professional efficiency, taking measurements with a fabric tape. But every casual touch, her fingers adjusting his collar, her hands smoothing fabric across his shoulders, sent electricity through Raphael's nervous system. Arms out. She measured his sleeve length, standing close enough that he could smell her perfume. Something citrus and warm. You work out? You've got good proportions. Strong shoulders, narrow waist. Raphael nodded, not trusting his voice. When her hand brushed his shoulder blade, he flinched violently. Elara stepped back immediately. Did I hurt you? No, just not used to. He trailed off, unable to finish. Not used to what? Being touched. She studied him with those penetrating eyes. Or not used to being touched gently? The observation cut too close. Rafael changed the subject quickly. How long have you owned this place? 5 years. She wrote down measurements, circling back to stand in front of him. Built it from the ground up. Every client, every reputation point, earned through blood, sweat, and about 1,000 sleepless nights. That's impressive. Is it? Challenge sparkled in her eyes. You sound surprised. Let me guess. Didn't think a woman could run a successful business in this neighborhood. That's not what I meant. Relax. Her laugh was genuine, unguarded. I'm teasing you. Your wound's so tight, I could bounce quarters off you. When's the last time you actually relaxed? Rafael couldn't answer that. Couldn't tell her that relaxation felt like weakness, that letting his guard down had almost gotten him killed, that every moment of peace was just the calm before the next storm. But something about the way she looked at him, not with pity or fear, but with genuine curiosity, made him want to try. It's been a while, he admitted quietly. I can tell. She jotted down more numbers. Okay, I've got what I need. Come back Thursday, and we'll do a first fitting. The suit should be ready in about 10 days. 10 days felt like an eternity. Rafael nodded and left, already counting the hours until he could return. The visits became routine. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, Rafael would dismiss his security and walk alone to Voss atelier. Each time, Elara greeted him with that warm smile that made his chest tighten. Each time, they talked about nothing important, fabric choices, weather, city gossip, while something deeper grew between them. You always come alone, Elara observed during his 5th visit, pinning a sleeve adjustment. No wife checking in. No girlfriend vetting my fashion choices. No, by choice. Rafael met her eyes in the mirror. It's complicated. Everything worth having usually is. She moved to his other sleeve, her fingers brushing his wrist. There. Perfect. You know, you're one of my favorite clients. Why? Because you actually care. Most men I get in here, they're buying suits because someone told them they need to look professional. They treat it like a chore. But you. She stepped back, studying him. You look at yourself in these mirrors like you're trying to find someone you lost. Rafael's breath caught. She saw too much. Understood too much. It should have scared him, should have made him run. Instead, it made him want to stay. Maybe I am, he said quietly. Elara's expression softened. Injuries heal, you know. Scars fade. But the body remembers what it survived. So does the soul. That night, Rafael returned to his compound knowing he was in trouble. Not the kind of trouble he was used to, bullets and betrayals and blood. This was worse. This was hope, fragile and dangerous, whispering that maybe he wasn't broken forever. We need to talk. Dorian cornered Rafael in his office, closing the door with ominous finality. On the desk between them, security photos showed Rafael entering and exiting Voss atelier. Over and over. Who is she? Dorian demanded. A tailor. Don't insult my intelligence. You visited this boutique 8 times in 3 weeks. Alone. No security. No explanation. I don't need to explain myself to you. Yes, you do. Dorian leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. The Kestrels are moving on East District. Chin's crew is defecting. The Southside distributors are 2 weeks behind on payments because they think you're too weak to collect. And you're what? Playing dress-up with some woman. Rafael stood slowly, and for a moment, a flash of his old authority burned in his eyes. Choose your next words very carefully. Boss, I'm not trying to disrespect you. I'm trying to save you. Save us. Dorian's jaw tightened. Everyone can see you're vulnerable right now. Everyone. If the Kestrels find out you're making yourself an easy target. Get out. Rafael. I said get out. The shout tore from Rafael's throat with enough force that Dorian actually stepped back. After his second-in-command left, Rafael sank into his chair, hands shaking again. Dorian was right. He knew Dorian was right. But the thought of staying away from Elara, of returning to that gray numbness, filled him with a terror deeper than any threat the Kestrels could pose. At least when he was with her, he felt alive. Even if that aliveness came with fear and vulnerability and all the things that could get him killed. At least he felt something. Across the city, in a warehouse that stank of salt water and engine oil, Silas Kestrel studied the same surveillance photos with cold satisfaction. He's going to this boutique 4 times a week. His lieutenant dropped another stack of images on the table. Alone, unarmed, lost in his own head. Silas traced Rafael's figure in one photo with a scarred finger. The accident should have killed him. But it did something better, it broke him. A dead king becomes a martyr. But a weak king. He smiled without warmth. That, they abandon. What do you want us to do? Watch him. Learn his patterns. And when he's most vulnerable, most distracted, Silas's smile widened. We finish what we started. Raphael felt at the moment he entered Voss Atelier that Thursday, something was different. Elara's usual warmth seemed strained, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Everything okay? He asked as she led him to the fitting room. Fine. Just a long day. She held up the newest suit, a charcoal gray that somehow looked both powerful and elegant. Try this on. Raphael changed behind the screen, emerging to find Elara waiting with pins and measuring tape. But when she reached to adjust his collar, he caught her hand without thinking. Talk to me, he said quietly. What's wrong? It's nothing. Just, she hesitated, then met his eyes. Raphael, what are you running from? The question hit like a bullet. What? Every time you come here, you look like you're being chased. Like this is the only place you feel safe. And I need to know, am I helping you? Or am I helping you hide? Raphael released her hand, turning away. You wouldn't understand. Try me. I can't. Can't or won't. Elara moved to stand in front of him, forcing him to look at her. For 3 weeks, you've been coming here. Buying suits you don't need. Having conversations that never go deeper than surface level. And I've let it happen because I liked seeing you. I liked watching you relax, watching the tension leave your shoulders, watching you almost smile. Elara, but I need to know what I'm part of here. Because the way you look at me, her voice softened. The way you look at me makes me think this is about more than suits. Raphael's control shattered. Words spilled out before he could stop them. I almost died 6 months ago. Car accident. Except it wasn't an accident. Someone tried to kill me, and they almost succeeded. And after, I couldn't. He gestured helplessly at himself. I couldn't feel anything. Nothing. For months. Like someone had turned off everything inside me that made me human. Elara listened, her expression unreadable. And then I walked into your boutique, Raphael continued, his voice rough. And you smiled at me. You spoke to me like I was just a person. Not a ghost, not a victim, not. He stopped, unable to say more. Not what? Elara prompted gently. Not a monster. The words hung between them. Elara studied him for a long moment, then stepped closer, placing her hand over his heart. Your heart is racing. I know. That means you're alive, Raphael. Whatever happened to you, whatever you think you lost, you're still here. Still fighting. Still feeling. Only when I'm with you, he whispered. Before Elara could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned. I need to take this. Don't move. She stepped into her office, leaving Raphael alone with his reflection and his racing thoughts. He'd said too much, revealed too much. Now she'd ask questions he couldn't answer, and he'd have to choose between lying to her or telling her the truth about who he really was. A monster in a nice suit was still a monster. When Elara returned, her expression was troubled. I'm sorry, I need to close early. Family emergency. Is everything? It's fine. Raphael, can we continue this conversation? Tomorrow maybe? He nodded, throat tight. Of course. As Raphael left the boutique, he didn't notice the car parked across the street. Didn't see the man with the camera. Didn't feel the net tightening around him. But he should have. Rain hammered hard in a city the following evening, turning streets into rivers and neon signs into watercolor smears. Raphael had spent the day handling business he'd neglected for weeks, approving shipments, making calls, reminding people why his name still carried weight. It exhausted him in ways physical labor never had. But by sunset, he found himself walking toward Voss Atelier again. Elara had texted him earlier. Can you come by around 8? After closing. We need to talk. Those 4 words, we need to talk, carried ominous weight. Raphael knew what was coming. She'd demand answers. Want to know who he really was, what he really did. And he'd have to decide whether to lie to her face or tell her the truth and watch her fear replace the warmth in her eyes. He was so lost in his thoughts that he almost missed it. The car pulled alongside him too smoothly, too deliberately. Raphael's instincts, dulled by months of emotional fog, suddenly screamed to life. He moved on pure reflex as the doors flew open. 3 men, armed, trained. Kestrel Syndicate. Raphael recognized the lead operative, Udo, one of Silas Kestrel's best. The man grinned as he advanced, knife gleaming in the rain. "The boss sends his regards," Yudo said. Rafael didn't waste breath on words. 20 years in the underworld had taught him that survival meant action, not conversation. He dodged Yudo's first strike, deflected the second with his forearm. But he was slower than he used to be. Weaker. The blade still found his side, slicing deep enough to make him gasp. Pain exploded through his torso, bright and clarifying. Rafael fought like a cornered animal, brutal and desperate. He took down the second attacker with an elbow to the throat, sent the third sprawling with a knee to the gut. But Yudo was good, too good, and when his blade came around again, Rafael barely managed to catch his wrist. They grappled in the rain, blood and water mixing on the pavement. Rafael's injured side screamed, but he held on, forcing Yudo's knife hand away from his throat. For a moment, they were locked together, both straining, both knowing one would walk away and one wouldn't. Then Yudo's free hand found Rafael's ribs, right where the accident had shattered them. He pressed, hard, and Rafael's grip faltered. He went down, coughing, tasting copper. Yudo stood over him, knife raised. Silas was right. "You're finished, Gene." A gunshot cracked through the rain. Not at Rafael. A warning shot that sent Yudo and his remaining operative scrambling back to their car. Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Yudo spat on the ground near Rafael's head. "Next time, you won't get lucky." The car peeled away, leaving Rafael bleeding in the rain. He should call his people. Should get to a safe house. Should do any of 100 smart, tactical things. Instead, he dragged himself to his feet and stumbled toward the only place that felt like sanctuary. Toward the only person who'd made him feel human. Toward Elara. Each step sent agony through his side. Blood soaked through his shirt, his jacket, dripping onto wet pavement. Rafael's vision blurred, but he kept walking. Had to reach her. Had to. His legs gave out against Voss Atelier's glass door. He slumped there, leaving a red streak, no longer able to stand. Inside, Elara looked up from paperwork at the sound. Her eyes went wide. "Oh my God, Rafael." She ran to the door, unlocked it, caught him as he collapsed inward. "What happened? Who did this?" "Sorry." The word came out as a gasp. "Nowhere else to go. Don't apologize. Don't." Elara locked the door behind them, pulled the curtains, half-carried him to the fitting area. "I need to call an ambulance." "No." Rafael's hand shot out, gripping hers with desperate strength. "No hospitals. No police. Please." Elara stared at him, and he watched understanding crystallize in her eyes. "Who are you?" "Someone who shouldn't have involved you." "I'll go." "You're not going anywhere bleeding like this." She grabbed a first aid kit from under her counter, her hands shaking as she cut away his blood-soaked shirt. "Jesus, Rafael. What kind of trouble are you in?" The scars she revealed told their own story. Not just tonight's knife wound, but old ones. Surgical scars from the accident. Impact trauma. Burns. The topography of a violent life mapped across his skin. "I used to run things," Rafael said, his voice thick with pain and something else. "Shame. Not the parts of this city you see. The underneath parts. The deals, the territory, the power. I wasn't a good man, Elara. I'm still not. But I was strong. Feared. In control. The accident." Her hands worked steadily, cleaning the wound even as her voice shook. "Rivals tried to kill me. Almost succeeded." A bitter laugh escaped him. "I survived, but something broke. Not just bones. Something deeper. I couldn't feel anything for months. Couldn't want anything. I was empty. Until..." Elara pressed gauze to his side, applying pressure to stop the bleeding. "Until you." Rafael looked at her, raw and vulnerable. "Your voice. The way you treated me like I was just a man, not a weapon or a liability. I felt something. For the first time in 6 months, I felt alive. So you kept coming back, even though it was dangerous. I kept coming back because you were the only real thing in my life. The only good thing." His hand found hers where she pressed the gauze. "I know what you're thinking. You should call the police, turn me in, run as far from me as possible. Whatever I am, whatever I've done." "Shut up." Elara's voice was fierce. "Shut up and let me think." She finished bandaging him in silence, her movements efficient despite her trembling hands. The knife wound was deep but hadn't hit anything vital. He'd need proper stitches, but her field work would hold for now. When she was done, she sat back on her heels, studying him. Rafael waited for judgment, for fear, for her to order him out of her life forever. Instead, she said, "Why did you come here?" "I didn't want to die alone," Rafael admitted. "When they attacked, all I could think was, I don't want to die without seeing you again." Elara's composure cracked. She pulled him against her, and Rafael Jin, who hadn't cried since childhood, who'd built an empire on fear and violence, broke down completely. Sobs racked his damaged body while rain drummed against windows, and she held him like he was something precious instead of broken. "I'm sorry," he gasped between sobs. "I'm so sorry. I brought danger to your door. I should never have." "Rafael." Elara cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. "What you're describing, feeling nothing, being hollow, that's not weakness. That's trauma. And coming here, trusting me, letting yourself feel again, that takes more courage than anything you did in your old life." "I'm not brave. I'm terrified." "Of what?" "Of this. Of feeling. Of wanting something I can't protect." His hand covered hers where she held his face. "Of losing you. You can't lose what you never had." "Then let me have it." The words came out desperate, pleading. "Let me have this. Even if it's just tonight. Even if tomorrow you tell me to never come back. Just, please. Let me have this moment where I'm not the man who hurts people. Where I'm just Rafael." Elara studied him for a long moment. Then she leaned in and kissed him, soft and deliberate and full of choice. Rafael's world narrowed to this. Her lips, her hands gentle on his face, the way she kissed him like he was worth saving. When they broke apart, he was breathing hard, not from pain, but from the overwhelming reality of being present in his own body again. "Come on." Elara helped him stand, guided him to the leather couch in her office area. "You need to rest." She brought blankets, water, painkillers. Settled beside him as rain continued its steady percussion outside. Rafael closed his eyes, feeling her warmth, her presence, like an anchor in churning waters. "These scars," Elara said quietly, tracing them with gentle fingers. "They don't make you less of a man. They're proof you survived." "I don't feel like I survived. I feel like I'm still dying, just slower." "Then stop dying." Her voice turned fierce. "Stop letting them win. Stop letting fear eat you alive." "How?" "By choosing something else. By fighting for what makes you feel alive instead of what made you powerful." Rafael opened his eyes, finding her watching him with an intensity that matched his own desperate need. "I don't know how to do that." "Yes, you do. You're already doing it." She kissed him again, deeper this time, and Rafael felt his body respond in ways it hadn't since before the accident. Not just mechanically, but with genuine desire, genuine connection. When Elara pulled back, her eyes were dark with want. "Are you sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." What happened next was slow, tender, healing. Every touch was permission and acceptance. Every kiss was forgiveness. Elara saw every scar, every vulnerability, every broken piece, and didn't turn away. She traced his damage with reverent fingers, replaced shame with sweetness, gave him back his humanity one breath at a time. For Rafael, it was resurrection. His body worked not because it had to, but because he wanted it to. Because he was present in his skin, present with another person, feeling everything with an intensity that almost hurt. When it was over, they lay tangled together under blankets while rain fell and the city breathed outside. Rafael felt something he'd thought was lost forever: peace. "I don't know what happens next," he admitted into the comfortable silence. "Neither do I." Elara's fingers traced lazy patterns on his chest, careful of his bandages. "But I know you can't keep living the way you have been. Half alive, waiting for the next attack." "I know. So what are you going to do?" Rafael was quiet for a long moment, thinking about Dorian's suspicions, about the Kestrel's circling, about his crumbling empire, about the man he used to be versus the man lying here with his head on Elara's shoulder. "I'm going to fight," he said finally. "Not the way I used to, not for power or territory or fear, but for this, for what makes life worth living." "And what's that?" He lifted his head to look at her, memorizing her face in the dim light. "You. This. The possibility that I can be something more than what I was." Elara smiled, real and warm and unafraid. "That's a good start." Dawn broke over Haruna City in shades of pink and gold. Rafael woke to find Elara still sleeping beside him, her hand resting over his heart. The pain in his side was real and sharp, but manageable. Everything else felt clearer than it had in months. His phone buzzed. 37 missed calls from Dorian. 24 from his security team. One text from a blocked number that made his blood run cold. "We know where you are." SK. Rafael stared at the message, then at Elara's peaceful face. The old Rafael would have run. Would have cut ties to protect himself, chosen power over connection, survival over living. But the man who'd emerged from that rain-soaked alley bleeding and broken, who'd collapsed at this woman's door and been given back his humanity, he wasn't the old Rafael anymore. He texted Dorian, "Meeting. My office. 1 hour. Everyone." Elara stirred, her eyes opening slowly. "Going somewhere. I have to face them. My people. My enemies. All of it. What will you tell them?" Rafael sat up, wincing as his wound pulled. "The truth. That I'm not the man I was. That I won't lead through fear anymore. That if they want the old Rafael Jin, they'll have to find someone else. They might kill you for that. They might." He took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "Elara, last night you saved my life. Not just from bleeding out, from drowning in my own darkness. But I can't ask you to be part of what comes next. My world is violent, dangerous." "Stop." She squeezed his hand. "I know what I'm choosing. I saw who you really are last night, Rafael. Not the crime lord, not the victim, the man. And that man is worth fighting for. You don't know what you're saying." "Yes, I do." Her eyes were clear, certain, unflinching. "I'm not some fragile thing that needs protecting. I built this business from nothing in this city. I survived my own battles. And if you're going to change your life, you'll need someone who sees who you really are. Why would you risk that for me? Because when you were bleeding and broken, you didn't run to your fortress. You came to me. That tells me everything about what you really value." Rafael pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not." She smiled against his skin. "But you're stuck with me anyway." They stood together in the boutique as morning light flooded through windows, turning everything golden. Rafael's phone kept buzzing, but he ignored it for one more moment. One more breath of peace before he walked back into the storm. "I don't know how this ends," he admitted. "Then we'll figure it out together." Elara helped him button a clean shirt she'd found in his completed orders, her fingers steady where his still trembled slightly. Rafael Jin, once the untouchable king of Harness City's underworld, once broken and hollow and convinced he was half the man he used to be, looked at the woman who'd reminded him what it meant to be fully human. The scars still mapped his body. The dangers still circled like sharks. His empire might crumble, his enemies might win, his own people might turn on him. But for the first time since twisted metal and shattered glass, he had something worth fighting for. Not territory or power or fear. Hope, connection, life. He kissed Elara one more time, then squared his shoulders despite the pain. "Ready? Are you?" Rafael smiled, genuinely smiled, for the first time in 6 months. "For the first time in my life, yes. I'm not fighting to survive anymore. I'm fighting for something worth living for." They stepped out together into morning sunlight, into uncertainty, into whatever came next. The city watched. Danger gathered on the horizon like storm clouds. But Rafael Jin walked toward it with his hand in Elara's, no longer running from his humanity, but claiming it with both hands. The compound was silent when Rafael arrived, Elara beside him despite his protests. Dorian and 12 of Rafael's top lieutenants waited in the conference room, their faces ranging from concerned to calculating to openly hostile. "Boss." Dorian stood, his eyes flickering to Elara with barely concealed suspicion. "We've been trying to reach you for hours. The Kestrels hit 3 of our locations last night. Chen's crew officially defected. And you?" He gestured at Rafael's obvious injuries. "You look like hell." "I know what I look like." Rafael moved to the head of the table, Elara taking a position by the wall. "I know what you all think. That I've been weak, distracted, that the accident broke something in me that can't be fixed." Murmurs rippled through the room. Rafael held up a hand for silence. "You're right. The accident did break me. For 6 months, I've been a ghost wearing my own skin. Couldn't feel, couldn't lead, couldn't be the man you needed. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you that changed overnight." "Then what are you telling us?" Marcus, his security chief, leaned forward. "Because right now, the Kestrels think you're finished. Half our organization thinks the same. I'm telling you that I'm done leading through fear. Raphael's voice was steady, certain. I built this empire on violence and intimidation. Made men respect me because they were terrified of what I'd do if they didn't. And maybe that worked for a while. But it also made me a target. Made me someone who had to be destroyed because I was too dangerous to exist. So what? You're going soft. One of the younger lieutenants, Kim, practically spat the words. The Kestrels tried to kill you, and your response is to become weak? No. Raphael's eyes hardened. My response is to become smart. To build something that doesn't require me to be a monster to maintain it. To create loyalty based on mutual benefit instead of fear. That's not how this world works, Dorian said quietly. You know that better than anyone. Then maybe it's time to change how this world works. Raphael looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. I'm giving all of you a choice. Stay with me and help build something different. Something sustainable. Or walk away now with my blessing and no repercussions. But if you stay, understand this. I'm not the man I was. I won't be that man again. And if that's not enough for you, then you're in the wrong room. The silence stretched like a blade. Then Marcus stood. I'm in. You're insane, Kim said, shaking his head. All of you. The Kestrels will. The Kestrels will do what they've always done, Raphael interrupted. Come at me with everything they have. But this time, I'll be ready. Not because I'm the most brutal or the most feared, but because I finally have something worth protecting. His eyes found Elara across the room, and she smiled. Meeting adjourned, Raphael said. Dorian, Marcus, stay? Everyone else, decide by tonight. In or out. When the room cleared, leaving only Raphael, Elara, Dorian, and Marcus, the real conversation began. This is about her, isn't it? Dorian gestured at Elara. You're risking everything because of. Watch your tone, Raphael said quietly. Elara stepped forward. He's risking everything because he finally remembered what it feels like to be human. And in case you haven't noticed, a human being with something to fight for is a lot more dangerous than a monster with nothing to lose. Dorian stared at her, then at Raphael. Who is she? Someone who saved my life. Raphael's hand found Elara's. And someone I'm going to protect with everything I have left. The Kestrels know about her, Marcus said, pulling up the threatening text on his tablet. They know she matters to you. That makes her a target. Then we protect her. Round-the-clock security, safe locations, everything. I can protect myself, Elara said firmly. But I won't run. I won't hide. And I won't let you face this alone. Raphael looked at her, something fierce and grateful burning in his chest. Then he turned back to his men. Here's what we're going to do. 6 weeks later, Voss Atelier had a new security system and a regular customer who happened to be a reformed crime boss. Rafael Jin had restructured his organization, cutting out the violence and refocusing on legitimate business ventures, imports, real estate, consulting. Half his old crew had walked away. The other half stayed, curious about this new direction. The Kestrels had tried twice more to finish what they started. Both times, they'd failed, not because Raphael fought them with overwhelming force, but because he'd outmaneuvered them with strategy, with alliances they hadn't seen coming, with a willingness to negotiate instead of escalate. Silas Kestrel learned, too late, that a man with nothing to lose is predictable. A man with everything to lose is far more dangerous. On a Tuesday evening, Raphael stood in Voss Atelier after closing, watching Elara work on a new design. She hummed while she pinned fabric, completely absorbed in her craft. The sight made something warm bloom in his chest. You're staring, she said without looking up. Can you blame me? She smiled, setting down her work to cross to him. How'd the meeting go? Chen wants back in. Offered to turn on the Kestrels completely. Are you going to let him? On probation. Trust has to be earned back. Raphael pulled her close, mindful of the scars that still marked his side. They ached sometimes, especially when rain was coming. But they didn't hurt the way they used to. Dorian thinks I've gone soft. And what do you think? Raphael considered the question seriously. I think I'm finally strong enough to be gentle. There's a difference. Elara kissed him, soft and sweet. Yes, there is. I never thank you properly, Raphael murmured against her lips. For what? For greeting me that first day? For not running when you saw what I really was? For reminding me that being broken doesn't mean being finished? You did that yourself. I just held up a mirror. Best mirror I've ever seen. Raphael smiled. the expression coming easier these days. I love you, Elara Voss. I know. She grinned. I love you too, Rafael Jin. Outside, Harana's city pulsed with life. Deals being made, hearts being broken, empires rising and falling like tides. But inside Voss Atelier, two people who'd found each other in the aftermath of destruction stood together. Proof that sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is admit they need someone else. Raphael's phone buzzed. Another meeting, another crisis, another challenge. But this time, when he checked it, he wasn't alone. Elara stood beside him, steady and strong, her hand in his. Ready? She asked. Rafael Jin, who'd once ruled through fear and nearly died from it, who'd been broken down to nothing and built himself back up into something better, looked at the woman who'd saved him by simply seeing him, and smiled. For the first time in my life, he said, I'm not just surviving. I'm living. And yes, I'm ready for whatever comes next. They walked out together into the evening, into their life, into a future neither of them could have imagined but both had chosen. The scars remained, they always would. But scars were just proof of survival, evidence of battles won, maps of where they'd been. And where they were going was so much better than where they'd been. The Korean Mafia boss who couldn't feel anything had learned to feel everything. And the bold black woman who'd greeted him with warmth instead of fear had shown him that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let yourself be vulnerable enough to heal. Together, they were unstoppable. Together, they were home. Together, they were proof that broken things, when put back together with care and love, can be even stronger than before. And that was worth fighting for, worth living for, worth everything. If this story moved you, if Rafael and Elara's journey resonated with your own struggles with vulnerability and healing, hit that like button right now. Their story reminds us that being broken doesn't mean being finished, and sometimes the strongest thing we can do is allow ourselves to feel again. Subscribe to this channel for more powerful stories about love, redemption, and second chances that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever met someone who made you feel alive again after a dark period? What would you do if you were Rafael, choosing between the safety of emotional numbness and the risk of feeling everything? Share your thoughts, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss our next incredible story. Your support means everything, and I'll see you in the next one.